of the Kashag on the 67th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising Day. Today marks the 67th anniversary of the 1959 Tibetan National Uprising, when Tibetans from all three provinces, monastics, and lay people alike rose in unison with indomitable courage in Tibet's capital Lhasa to protest the illegal invasion by the People's Republic of China and to safeguard the person of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama from imminent threat. On this solemn occasion, the Kashag pays its deepest tribute to all the martyrs who made the ultimate sacrifice for the sake of Tibet, its faith, and its people, and stands in unwavering solidarity with our brothers and sisters inside Tibet, whose resolve to preserve our distinct national identity remains as unyielding as Mount Meru, even in the face of relentless oppression by the government of the PRC. We also express our sincere gratitude to all our distinguished guests present here today for their powerful demonstration of solidarity within the Tibetan people, and to all nations, organizations, and individuals around the world who continue to support the cause of Tibet. Last year, in conjunction with the auspicious celebration of the 90th birthday of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Kashag launched the Year of Compassion. Through this continued observance, we seek to ascend the global family, His Holiness's profound treatises on compassion and foster its spirit, while cultivating the wisdom to attain happiness and alleviate the suffering of all sentient beings. This initiative seeks, to the fullest extent of our ability, to share His Holiness's sacred counsel in fulfilling humanity's shared aspiration for the physical world to abide in elemental balance, and for sentient beings in its inner essence to remain in tranquility and peace. One thing in which we can firmly anchor our trust and conviction is His Holiness's profound treatises on compassion. As Jamgyong Rinpoche explains in his commentary on the Worlds of Chandra, the power of compassion lies in never abandoning the endeavor to protect all sentient beings. Thus, His Holiness's all-encompassing compassion and unyielding commitment to the welfare of all will sooner or later pacify the hostility and malice of the PRC government and its leaders and guide them towards friendship. At present, the government of the PRC is falsely asserting that Tibet and all non-Han nationalities are part of the constructed Zhonghua Minzu. It is mobilizing under the proclaimed mandate of forging a strong sense of community for the Chinese nation and full machinery of the state to carry out expansive and deeply entrenched policies within Tibet aimed at eradicating both Tibet's physical environment and its people's distinct national identity. Specifically, around 1 million Tibetan children have been forcibly placed in colonial boarding schools where the teaching of the Tibetan language and the transmission of Tibetan culture are severely restricted. Within these schools, Tibetan children are subjected to intensive political indoctrination under Communist Party ideology. The United Nations, the United States government, the European Parliament, and leading international research institutions have recognized this policy as forced assimilation and a systematic effort to erode Tibetan cultural identity. The PRC government is executing large-scale forced relocation and labor transfer targeting Tibetan farmers and nomads through programs such as the Training and Labor Transfer Action Plan. A joint statement released by a group of UN experts on 22nd January 2026 reveals that between 2000 and 2025, some 3.6 million Tibetans, nearly half the total Tibetan population, have been affected by these programs. It further highlighted the severity of these state-led efforts, noting that in many cases, the coercive elements are so severe that they may amount to forcible transfer and/or enslavement as crimes against humanity. The United States Commission on International Religious Freedom, USCIRF, in its 2025 report stated that the PRC government's implementation of the policy of sinicization of Tibetan Buddhism represents a systematic pattern of repression that fully meets the definition of cultural genocide. Currently, the PRC government is deliberately and increasingly misinterpreting its own constitution and through administrative efforts and subordinate regulations, implementing sweeping measures that roll back and effectively nullify the rights of nationalities guaranteed under its constitution and the law of People's Republic of China on regional ethnic autonomy. Against the backdrop of global warming, the Chinese government's reckless infrastructure development and large-scale resource mining projects have caused temperatures on the Tibetan Plateau to rise at 3 times the global average. The Mintok hydropower project launched last year, alongside hydropower projects on major and mid-sized rivers and the blanketing of vast landscapes with solar arrays, not only devastates the ecosystem of the Tibetan Plateau, but continues to pose a direct threat to the water security of the Asian continent. Coupled with these projects, the settlement of millions of ethnic Chinese in Tibetan areas and the forcible relocation of Tibetans resulting from these projects will undeniably threaten the survival of their distinct identity and the sustainability of their livelihoods. In brief, the United Nations and the international community have determined that the policies currently being implemented in Tibet by the PRC's communist government, as outlined above, meet the criteria defined in Article 2 of the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which entered into force on 12 January 1951, and consequently, it is imperative that the prosecution be pursued in accordance with the provisions of Article 3 of the Convention. Meanwhile, it has become a routine practice for the Chinese government to arrest, detain, and imprison those who refuse to comply or those who protest against its genocidal policies. Nevertheless, it can be reasonably foreseen that the policies pursued by the leaders of the government of the PRC, employing centuries-old colonial tradition to annihilate both the environment of the people of Tibet, will ultimately fail. The reckless destruction of the Tibetan Plateau, a strategic geographical region also known as the Water Tower of Asia, does not merely impact the 2 billion people who depend on Tibetan's rivers, but also threatens the interests of the entire world in our collective effort to confront the global climate crisis. The land of snow, since countless eons past, has been held in sacred embrace of Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of infinite compassion, who awakened the Bodhicitta aspiration to take Tibet as his field of disciples. Through the emanation of the Bodhisattva progenitor monkey, he first propagated the Tibetan people, and thereafter, through immeasurable Bodhisattva emanations as kings and ministers, has held in protection the welfare of Tibet and people, and continues to do so. Having solemnly vowed, with his 1,000 arms and 1,000 eyes, never to forsake Tibet and its people for as long as eons endured, it is absolutely certain that the destructive designs of the PRC government, bound to a crumbling communist ideology to utterly destroy Tibet and its people, will never succeed. Tibet has never been a part of China since ancient times, and is rather a nation under the illegal occupation of the communist PRC. The fact that the question of Tibet is not an internal affair of China, but rather an unresolved international conflict, has been clearly established in promoting a resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act, enacted by the U.S. government. Regarding the reincarnation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the international community, through around 134 formal pronouncements, including legislations, resolutions, and declarations, categorically rejects the PRC's so-called 3 conditions put forth in complete disregard for religious tradition and with an abandonment of political morality, and asserts a unified stance of non-recognition whatsoever. Nevertheless, the PRC continues to push its malicious agenda inside China and Tibet. Alongside its intensifying propaganda campaigns, the PRC government is exploiting its stage-appointed Binchen Gyaltsen Norbu and a handful of lamas and monks through staged meetings and scripted speeches. It is certain that such orchestrated attempts will never be accepted by anyone, neither now nor at any point in the future. In conclusion, we earnestly pray for His Holiness the Great 14th Dalai Lama of Tibet to live for eons and for the spontaneous fulfillment of all his sacred aspirations, including the 4 noble commitments. May the auspicious day soon dawn when His Holiness makes his rightful return to the Potala Palace, and Tibetans inside and outside Tibet collectively dwell in spiritual bliss. The Gashlag 10 March 2026.
Kazanla, thank you so much. And now we have Sherab Churgamla. She'll be reading the statements from the Parliament in Exile. Sherabla Pirona. Toje.
Statement of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile on the commemoration of the 67th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising. Throughout the course of its historical involvement since the very beginning of human society, the management and control of the Tibetan nation with regards to its political matters, governance, and legal system have been carried out by its own people without any sort of external dominion authority. This was because Tibet was a free and fully independent country. Its status as such was fully in keeping with today's universally defined conditions for the recognition of a sovereign independent country and for the recognition of the nationality by which a nationhood is constituted. Besides, Tibet's history of independence has been more robust and much longer than that of many other sovereign independent countries of today. Notwithstanding the fact, however, the People's Republic of China launched an armed invasion of the country in 1949. The development culminated on the 10th of March in 1959, when people from all the 3 provinces of Tibet, monastics as well as the lay people, staged a massive uprising in the capital Lhasa in a spontaneous outburst of united protest against the occupying communist Chinese power due to the policies they implemented and the military domination they imposed in the country. We are today commemorating the 67th anniversary of that event. It is a day impossible for any Tibetan person to ever forget. It is not only a day of immense importance to all the Tibetan people, for it is also our Martyrs' Day, to commemorate the men and women who have sacrificed their all, including their very lives, for the religion, polity, and people of Tibet. And so, for all those who have thus far sacrificed their everything, including their precious lives, for the cause of the Tibetan people, persecuted by the Communist Chinese government under all manners of false pretexts even today, the Tibetan Parliament in Exile commend the martyrs for their resoluteness, valor, and selfless patriotism. Along with it, we offer ardent prayers that the heartfelt wishes of the Tibetan people, the living as well as the dead, for the victorious revival of the freedom of Tibet may be realized with utmost certainty, and that they be embraced with the protective compassion of the patron deity Avalokiteshvara of Tibet for all lifetimes to come. During the period following the Second World War, when many countries that had long been under imperial domination regained their independence, the government of the People's Republic of China exploited the prevailing political situation and other circumstances of the time to launch an armed invasion of Tibet. The ever-worsening situation in Tibet eventually compelled His Holiness the Dalai Lama and more than 80,000 Tibetans to flee their homeland in 1959 to seek refuge in the Holy Land of India. During the period of 77 years thus far, throughout which the People's Republic of China has remained in armed occupation of Tibet, a total of more than 2 million Tibetan people have met with untimely death under various circumstances engendered by it. And along also with the total destruction of thousands of places of religious study and worship, the government of China has unleashed unimaginably horrifying degree and scale of devastation, plunder, and looting on Tibet's territorial riches and its living beings. In addition, the government of China has remained relentless in its pursuit of series of egregious policies directed at destroying the religious, cultural, and linguistic heritage and other characteristic features of the Tibetan people that define Tibetan national identity. It is in a continuation of the implementation of this policy that the Chinese Communist Party has forced countless number of Tibetan children to be removed from their parents and communities to be enrolled in boarding schools with the diabolical strategy to transform the Tibetan identity of Tibet into a Chinese one. This agenda remains an ongoing danger and has today become a matter of utmost urgency. Far from being open to entertaining any idea for the resolution of the Sino-Tibetan conflict, the leaders of China continue to subterfuge with an outpouring of misinformation designed to deceive not only the people of China, but also the international community by shelving or burying the reality. Nevertheless, this ongoing malpractice of the government of China is all too well known to everyone. Throughout the period that China has remained under the illegal occupation, throughout the period that Tibet has remained under the illegal occupation of China since its armed invasion, the government of China has kept distorting the country's historical sovereignty with fabricated narratives sought to corrupt the unique culture of the Tibetan people by adulterating it, used coercion to deprive the people of Tibet of their freedom of religious belief, set out to devastate the territorial and natural environment of Tibet, kept trampling on the human rights of Tibetan people, shut them up from exercising their freedom of speech, colonized Tibet in the name of economic development and progress, made active efforts to prevent any expression of the oneness of the nationality of the Tibetan people, and disregarded the wishes of the Tibetan people. Apart from these, the ground reality remains that the government of China has thus far never implemented any genuinely intended policy measure which is suited to the needs of the Tibetan people. Rather, it has relied solely on policies of violent reprisal and brutal repression against the people of Tibet. As a result, the Tibetan people, both the old and new generations, have carried out a succession of protest demonstrations in a campaign that began in 1987. In particular, the Great Earth Mouse Year uprising protests carried out simultaneously by the people of all the 3 traditional provinces of Tibet in 2008 still remain fresh in our minds. Along with that, it is worth noting that since the year 2009, there have been a total of at least 157 incidents in which individual Tibetans in occupied Tibet have carried out protest self-immolations and acts of a non-violent campaign against the government of China. These various types of protests continue to be carried out by the Tibetan people to this day. It is important that the government of China appreciate the enormity of the sacrifices the Tibetan people have been making through these protest campaigns. Since 1979, the Central Tibetan Administration has taken a series of steps by which it made efforts to seek a solution to the Sino-Tibetan conflict by means of adopting a middle way policy. However, the leaders of the People's Republic of China have refused to budge from their existing hardline policy, with the result that there have been no positive developments in the situation. The situation in Tibet today is such that the Tibetan people continue to remain prohibited from engaging in any public activity that highlights their linguistic, religious, cultural, and artistic heritage, as well as the protection of the ecological environment on the pain of being subjected to arbitrary arrest. It is also a matter of an all too common knowledge that within their own country, the Tibetan people continue to be hindered from fully exercising their freedoms and rights in all aspects of their behavior, their movement, stay, or activities. This is borne out by the fact that in its annual Freedom in the World report in 2025, which rated people's access to political rights and civil liberties in countries and territories across the world, the human rights organization Freedom House described the situation in Tibet as one which continued to remain extremely repressive. Likewise, the State Department of the United States government detailed the lack of human rights in Tibet in its annual country reports on human rights practices released on the 13th of August 2025, as well as in other reports. The annual report in particular highlighted the fact that China had carried out arbitrary arrests and imprisonments, restricted religious freedom, and perpetrated transnational repression against Tibetan people living in other countries. The report described these as a continuing and ongoing violations of the Tibetan rights of the Tibetan people. These reports make it clear that the government of China had continued to degrade and weaken the political freedom, civil liberties, and ethnic freedom of the Tibetan people on an ongoing basis, that it has been undermining the linguistic, religious, and customary traditions that define the Tibetan identity, that it has been destroying the moral fabric of the Tibetan society, and that it has also been devastating the ecological environment of Tibet. Given such findings, which continue to constitute ongoing atrocities in Tibet, with reports thereon continuing to be most alarming, we reiterate our call on the government of China to bring an immediate end to these violations and atrocities. It is thanks entirely to the kindness and grace of His Holiness the Dalai Lama that during the past more than 6 decades of living in exile, we have been able to maintain the momentum of an unwavering struggle for the fundamental cause of Tibet, and in making efforts for the preservation of our religious, cultural, linguistic, and other aspects of Tibetan heritage and identity. We have achieved substantial amounts of success in these endeavors and can justly be proud of these achievements. Nevertheless, we are now in a critical moment when the world has entered a new era. It is an era in which the Tibetan people are faced with an existential threat, and in order to save ourselves from this abyss, we all need to unite and work together in a cooperative manner. This is the biggest responsibility of the current generation of the Tibetan people. Hence, we strongly urge everyone to strengthen their sense of commitment towards the preservation of the ethnic identity of the Tibetan people, as well as the Tibetan language and culture, and towards the struggle for the fundamental cause of Tibet. During the winter session of the Indian Parliament in New Delhi in December 2025, the Tibetan Parliament in Exile carried out a week-long lobbying campaign among its members. Members of the Standing Committee of the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, divided into 3 working groups, met with a total of 42 prominent Indian leaders during the campaign, which included 4 union ministers and other members of the upper and lower houses of the parliament belonging to 14 different political parties. The working groups briefed the Indian leaders about the urgency of the situation facing Tibet today and on other important related matters. The Tibetan Parliament in Exile also organized a series of events to mark the 90th birthday of His Holiness Dalai Lama, which is being commemorated year-long as a year of compassion. These have included the All-Party Indian Parliamentary Forum for Tibet and the Tibetan Parliament in Exile jointly convening a commemorative meeting in New Delhi on the 18th of December 2025 as previously planned. The event concluded with a member of the All-Party Indian Parliamentary Forum for Tibet unanimously adopting a 5-point resolution. Taking the opportunity provided by this occasion, the Tibetan Parliament in Exile wishes to express its gratitude to Secretary of State Marco Rubio of the United States of America for his offering of greetings on the Tibetan New Year Day on 17th of February 2026, and for announcing the appointment of Mr. Riley M. Barnes, the State Department's Deputy Assistant Secretary for Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor as the new U.S. Special Coordinator for Tibetan Issues. Likewise, on behalf of all Tibetans, both in and outside of Tibet, the Tibetan Parliament in Exile also wishes to express deepest gratitude to the government and the people of India, who have been particularly gracious to the Tibetan people in exile, as well as to all countries, organizations, and individuals who have shown concern and support for the Tibetan cause. In conclusion, the Tibetan Parliament in Exile wishes to fervently pray that the beloved treasure of all Tibetans, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the ultimate refuge and protector, as well as the bulwark of support for all beings in the 3 realms, but especially for us of the snowland of Tibet, may be steadfast in remaining in our midst for 100 eons, with all his wishes being seen fulfilled with spontaneity and the just cause of Tibet being realized in all speediness. By the Tibetan Parliament in Exile, March 10, 2026.
Great job. Thank you, Sherab. And now we have Hadrunla. We'll request Hadrunla to give us a brief speech. Thank you.
So my name is Ladin Tatong. I am the co-founder and director of Tibet Action Institute. And we stand here on March 10th, 67 years after our people, Tibetan people in our capital city in Tibet, in Lhasa, defied all of the odds and went out into the streets to demand China's occupying forces get out of Tibet. They reasserted our Tibetan independence, and they vowed to protect the precious life of our leader, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And in doing that, in taking that step and going out into the streets, though they were outgunned, though the People's Liberation Army was a modern, vicious, battle-proven army, Tibetans went out and changed the course of our history, changed the destiny of the Tibetan nation. And I think these are the moments every March 10th. I was preparing remarks for something else, and I was thinking, like, this is the time for us to take stock, to assess, how are we doing? What is the state of the Tibetan nation? And also, as a part of that, what's the state of our freedom struggle? And as a part of that, how's China doing? What's the real story in the PRC? And I think right now, in a world of chaos, violence, the international order is shifting before our eyes, and people are feeling, rightly so, scared, uncertain, unclear, stressed out when they look out at the world and see what's happening. I think it's important for us as Tibetans to be laser focused on what we can do to contribute to a better world, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama has always done. No matter what our problems were, our own problems as a nation, as a people, he never stopped talking about global peace and compassion for all beings, the well-being of all people. So we do that, but we also have to stay laser focused on China. And I think we have to understand the position that they are in right now. And I know I say this, people who've heard me speak before, I say this a lot, but it's only getting truer and truer. The People's Republic of China is not strong. We have been for so long met with this narrative that China rises forever and that the economy grows and their power grows. And what does that mean for us as Tibetans? It means that ultimately we lose. They'll always be there. But that's not true. As Tibetans, as Buddhists, we know everything changes. That's the nature of reality. Impermanence. But even beyond that, the facts are there right now. The National People's Congress just took place in Beijing. For the first time in over 30 years, the Chinese government announced a growth target that is under 5%. So the world knows that the Chinese economy is slowing, in fact, stalling. But now the Chinese government just admitted it. And so they've announced a growth target for the coming year of 4.5% to 5%. That number is probably not even true. The last few years they've been saying 5% growth, 5% growth. Probably the real number, because they lie about all the data and we know that, probably the real number is half that, some say. But also, they have this economic crisis that means in practical terms for people in China, life is difficult, starting with COVID, Trump tariffs, global trade wars. Youth unemployment just a couple of years ago was like the high at 20%. Now they say it's 15 to 17. That's a very high number. It's an economic crisis. Real estate prices are down. Property prices are down officially 1/5. Actually, experts say more likely could be two times that. So you've got what, 40% drop in property prices? And why does that matter? Because the Chinese people put their savings into property, into real estate. They're not allowed to get it out of the country. Everything else is insecure, so they put that in property. That's their security. The average Chinese person, that's where their life savings is. And it's evaporating before their eyes. Because of corruption, because of overbuilding, because the Chinese government has mismanaged the entire economy. And now these people, average Chinese people, are seeing their life savings evaporate before their eyes. That causes unrest. That's not a strong China. At the same time, there's a demographic crisis. The one-child policy and rapid urbanization and industrialization in China, what does that mean for the population? It means that they're moving towards population collapse, demographic collapse. People call it a ticking time bomb. That's the reality. If you don't have babies being born, they just again reported the birth rate is down again, year upon year. No matter what the government does, no matter how they try to incentivize people to have children, young people aren't buying it. They're not having those kids. So the birth rate was down again for 2025. Now, what does this mean? It means you don't have the people, the workers, to drive the economy forward, let alone to have the economy move at all one day in the not too distant future. This is not good for the People's Republic of China and the stability of the Chinese Communist Party, okay? You've got economic crisis, you've got a demographic crisis like the world has never seen. And you have a political leadership crisis. Xi Jinping, you've seen the stories, the president of China purging, taking out everyone around him, not just Chinese Communist Party officials, over 1.3 million of them, saying they're corrupt, putting them in jail, investigating them. Now he's taking out the top levels of the military, like the entire, in all of China, there was a 7-member Central Military Commission with Xi Jinping at the top. In January, he just removed 2 of the last generals on that commission. Now it's just him and one of his lackeys. And the general that he took out, the senior most general, is one of the most respected, with the most street cred kind of generals in all of China. And he just took them out, purged them. The Center for Strategic International Studies, CSIS in Washington, D.C. released a report recently that says China's military purges, because it goes Xi Jinping's military purges, which go far beyond just the senior leaders, have made, compromised the battle readiness, the effectiveness of the People's Liberation Army. That's not good for China. And what does it say to us? The news talks about Xi Jinping consolidating power. How long do we believe that narrative? He's increasingly isolated. He's paranoid. He's the leader of one of the most powerful nations on earth, and he's, in a way, backing himself into a corner. It's not good for them. It's not good for global security. It's certainly not good for the longevity of the People's Republic of China, or him or the Chinese Communist Party. And while we do not want the Chinese people to suffer, this is the world as it is. And we have to be focused on what does it mean for us and how are we doing, right? That's our occupiers. So they're not doing well, and we need to understand that, because that means opportunity comes. And how are we doing? It has not been an easy 67 years, but the Tibetan nation survives to this day. His Holiness the Dalai Lama just turned 90 years old, and what did he do in his 90th year? He announced that the institution of the Dalai Lama will continue past the 14th Dalai Lama, and that the future Dalai Lama will not be born in Tibet as long as China occupies our country. And no foreign government, let alone the CCP, has any business and any involvement in the succession process. China was furious. Xi Jinping was furious. They've been wanting to install their own fake Dalai Lama. That's what they're aiming for. They were hoping on some level that we might get a little weak in front of them, make it easier. And His Holiness just took control of the narrative. Tibetans are firmly back in control, and China's not happy about that. Just like our people took back control in the streets of Lhasa, March 10th, 1959, this day. And at the same time, we have an elected Tibetan government in exile. We have elections and democracy. They don't. We have 90,000 registered voters in exile. Over 50,000 just participated in this last preliminary round of elections. Our elections aren't perfect. Our democracies are from perfect, but we have this. It's a strength. Tibetans inside are watching what we do, paying attention to what's happening out here. We have the democracy that Chinese people, so many of them, dream about. And yeah, it's in exile for now, but our people could have gone anywhere. They could have done anything. They could have given up. They don't have to participate, but we do. Why? Because we're still committed to our nation, because we're strong. That's what we need to be focused on. They are not. The Chinese Communist Party, the People's Republic of China, facing crises of massive proportions. Yes, inside life, Tibet is not easy. Tibetans are being targeted. Our children are in residential colonial boarding schools. Our monasteries are under attack. The nomadic way of life is under attack. Our ancient language, religion, culture is under attack. But our people haven't given up, and they show us time and time again. They go out in the streets and protest, or they do smaller local scale resistance. Tibetans have defied the odds. That's what we need to be focused on, and that's how we have to move forward. Focus on our strength, their weakness. The world changes like that. That's the lesson of history. So, when we look out at the world today, yes, we want less suffering in the world. We do not want more violence. We do not want more war. But we also have to remember that the Tibetan nation is there waiting. Our people are there waiting. We're their ambassadors, right? We're out here. We got to do our best. We got to fight hard. And we have to not lose hope. Look at the reality in China. That will help. So on this 67th commemoration of the Tibetan National Uprising Day, I say Tibet is strong. And we will see freedom in Tibet in the future. And I don't think it's that far away, and let's be ready, because we're focused on reality and what's coming. Let's be ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ladonga. The day on some of the Sawada Chen Kaletis doing it, Gomrona, Chukstang, that they get the lawyer that they get Malona Chagduraya, Howard like Kule Mangujani, statement Mangonga, congressman that the Manguts and the law. So now we have Jasmine Eames will be reading the statement from Jim McGovern. Thank you.
Statement by Representative James P. McGovern on the 67th Annual Commemoration of Tibetan Uprising Day. Today, Tibetans around the world honor those who rose up in Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, in defense of their freedom and national identity. They remember the many who sacrificed their lives in resistance to Chinese occupation, and they celebrate the resilience of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and the thousands who followed him into exile, determined to preserve their culture, language, and religion. 67 years is a long time. Generations of Tibetans have been born and raised in exile, longing to return to their homeland in freedom. Generations of Tibetans inside Tibet have been unable to see the Dalai Lama in person. Tibetans living under the People's Republic of China must bear severe restrictions on their religious and cultural practices. Many are unable to speak openly about their history or their hopes without fear of imprisonment or worse. That is why gatherings like these are so important. We speak out because Tibetans in Tibet cannot do so freely. The Chinese government continues to deny them rights guaranteed under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, including the freedoms of expression and peaceful assembly. In Amherst, Boston, and around the country, Tibetan Americans are able to exercise these rights under the First Amendment to the Constitution. With that freedom comes the responsibility to raise our voices for those who cannot. As a member of Congress, I remain committed to ensuring that the United States policy reflects our values and supports the human rights of the Tibetan people. In 2024, we enacted the Promoting of Resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act. This achievement builds on previous legislation I have been proud to lead, the Reciprocal Access to Tibet Act and the Tibetan Policy and Support Act. These laws make clear that Tibetans are people with the right to self-determination, that the United States has never accepted the claim that Tibet has been a part of China since ancient times, and that the Chinese government must allow meaningful dialogue without preconditions with the Dalai Lama or his representatives. We must also remain firm in defending religious freedom. The decision about the succession of the Dalai Lama belongs solely to His Holiness and the Tibetan Buddhist community. Any interference by the Chinese government in that sacred process is a violation of religious liberty and must be rejected by the international community. Human rights are indivisible and interdependent when governments take aim at freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Other fundamental rights are put at risk. At a time when the international human rights system is being threatened as never before, and we witness human rights violations in our own American communities, the Tibetan cause reminds us why perseverance matters. The Tibetan people have shown extraordinary courage and resilience over nearly 7 decades. You have kept your culture alive, you have strengthened your institutions in exile, and you have continued to call for dialogue and a peaceful resolution to the conflict. I stand with you today and every day in support of the fundamental human rights and dignity of the Tibetan people. Let us recommit ourselves to this work and continue the effort together. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. And now we have Mia Rose Eames will be reading the statement from Congressman Catherine Clark.
Thank you to everyone gathered today for showing up, standing up, and speaking up for the values that Massachusetts holds dear. Our Commonwealth's unshakable belief in fighting for what's right has always bound us to the cause of the Tibetan people. And 67 years after the Tibetan uprising, those ties remain as unyielding as ever. The legacy of those courageous protesters still inspires us today and continues to burn brightly in each of you. Nearly 35 years ago, His Holiness the Dalai Lama addressed Congress in the rotunda of the United States Capitol, urging that the American people never turn a blind eye to injustice. As he put it, individually and collectively, they must assume a greater sense of universal responsibility. Today, here and across the country, people of all backgrounds are answering the timeless call to action. You are honoring the responsibility we have to defend the dignity that is every person's birthright, and the self-determination that the Tibetan people are owed. Even amid so much division in our country, Congress support for Tibet remains bipartisan, and I am committed to using every tool at our disposal to drive progress toward a negotiated agreement with the PRC. Thank you to the Tibetan Association of Boston and to everyone working to realize the promise of true freedom for Tibet. I'm so proud to be in this fight alongside each of you. Sincerely, Catherine Clark.
Awesome job, Mia. Thank you so much. Antine ngajo de tari sisurla la kamyo kyukshna roslan bigushi shayu.
nga shi se Denmark jocha si an keski 총선에 숨주들여가 직시로 지스도 이내야 탱숨라 춘두시로 지사 아니 디윈데요 갑라 나네 숭대 마무시 로차르와 까마 좁게다 까마 쩌가 로이라 저 쉐게 저게 쇼데샤 니마의 차우체 애투 타부제 나가 제가 로고 거와 그래서 이게 춘두시에 아달래 이 남주 시에도요 숨주 뒤텐이래요 하라다 뒤디 ten고 Today is March 10th, Remembrance Day. We have to remember. 가르 ten고 거스나 회라 너 죽주 랩딩외라 숨주 뒤대 니모 회네 예랑 치부시블랑 최가 숨기 미여래 인디바 여래 미게 여래 로고 여래 싱바 여래 부구 여래 부모 여래 부 여래 참에 랑체 가르쳐버스나 회디 회미기 야나 왜네 마 로고레스 예미 갈라버스나 마레스 베랑종종레스 천안소로 랑종 띠기 최대라만 띠기 셰윤 띠기 캐나주 게 냐초그레 공서초기 꾸마 여샤버 띠게 랑자 니그레스 제체 가츠 셰베 이내야 베버서 갈라버스나 마레스 견성원줄로 고고당 갈래버레스 베디 야디서 갈래버레스 베미 게미서 갈래버레스 나란족 릭슈tam에 소갈레브레 게tam에 소갈레브레 최tam에 소갈레브레 베디 야나소야레스 야나슝기 마레스 orzu shivu gyabre an gelang chimbo lambre a zenjo la khonso cho ube ta phemi chige a zenjo jobre didu kapne maran so ko pola mola re pala amla re kharla gorsna gemi khumde tangla ije che yomardas koranso ke tepu gangsum gi miyu karasna bedi gade gyuriaredas bemi gemi soyaredas shebre 양내 전솔랑 버려 나랑 솔라 아 달래 숨주 두절랑 아주 양절 전솔랑 거고 강에서나 어루지라 양가 시치기 할시고스나 직진의 개미 독자라 멘도스 나랑 솔라 직진의 약보다 제용 당소 비자 찍기도 왔어 회라 도야도 왔어 회라 취자 시우지 yar게 칭샤 yar게 도도다스 회복 기부 여사르다스 제제 양아주 끼라고 고코르게 되는 용도 다 이내야 너 독주를 빌러 예살 해설에 별 용라 비비소 게라 랑체 예미파 로고구여스 회디 가지 수축의 메시아디 예미가 함시 가주 제바 이내야 먼저 캐나도 랑종지기 미리 모순적 지기 라이디 함시 준다 미마디 달래 나와디나라 야나 베이징 타주 아르체르스나 예용메마 투미 속시 야나게 National People's Congress 총수소제 팀 가르샤여스나 달래네 회나라 속보나라 당뇨미리 쯧베 사저 용나라 롭제 가르치기 입에 이내야 자기 돈이 치고 왔다스 개이 돈이 치고 왔다스 되게 겹초고 말다스 비 돈이 치초고 말다스 다 가르스고래 롭제 치야데 보고 롭툭네 치죠 롭르 땅체 땅에 상말라 야게 토리 라고래 게이 토리 라고래 게이 좋은 최고 그랬어 없이 찾아내다 다 로투주 랩딩을라 만수에 배워 뽀뽀 저기 회슝도네 제샤버데 내가 차용 것도 와 다들 예자 가르쳐 버려 낭주인의 이슈 최 가리 입에 있네야 대규 최고요 Synicization of Buddhism and religion 이 가르레도 슬라바이나 나중에는 공대당 치고 말도다 예장아 덴마크 손도 채워이 데나라 이슈기 church 격이 임베 있네 강라 크로스 돌고도 와 가스네 디 데미 마레스 이 출론데스 크로스 상모 돌고레스 가지 임반 모스 격인 강라 미나리나 콘소 따디 여기 돌고도 와 강라 갸초고면도 야나를 여베 있나 저 가리치기 입에 있네 야 데미 룩스기 게리 룩스기 강박 수업다 있네 가리 게리 룩스 제고로만 여베 일은 가가 제 총 말했어 다 단일 차라 배나를 고백하라 먼저기 단다 홀로다 먼저 샤워즈바 따다지 단다 열에 남지 모두 이게 삼아 떠오르랬어 간서나 디 예미 룩스에 말했어 예미 로단 룰루 말했어 이 떠오르래 견주 상마 강박 얘기 이내래 고막 얘기 이내 가외외네 예미기 로단 룰루 제고래 마도 직배 배바 제제 카가 제바 이내 디그 말했어 다 게임에 소유 용구도 와 다 최매버 소유 용거도 와. 다고 저기 배 라이드 티베트 라이드 시장 세제다 점링 용을 라고를 쓰기도 와. 딜라동을 배 라게디 책게 매버 소유 용거도 와. 다 가주 삼발라 시장라 아리나 초르고 말해. 예정아 컨퍼런스 도대고 갈라. 아 컨퍼런스 안 배배 티베트 로지스트니 캐버리는 망보 요래. 본사마다 배 갈라고 왔다. 아리 톨로 가와 가서 점링 용 나라. 콘조게 지들랍 용대가 탐소 시장 라야가시 지역구 수구도 와. 그것도 초와 벼릭랍니 되고 왔다. 벼베 낭주에 들랍 되고 왔다. 다 벼위집에다 사자카 아프리카 대 룽고치가 상과 상말 시장 모두 티베 요 말다. 이제 송인도에 가라 아주 숨주 뒤리니 뭐 가래 챙고르스나 숨주 뒤리 납주 나고 로라 gel랑 랑베기 벼르디. 벼디 벼미래 벼디 가데 남이야 소주기요 말스. 아 다른 거 팀랑 소유제 락다라 제 유도 하라 단대 데미 직전에 약보다 매나 직전에 약보다 재미요에 레바 제대바이나 안 베베시에서 지여로 봐. 더 레바디 레바가 풍세바나 신체제 풍야라 레샤. 지송사 갑갑 트랜스 별 로고고래 남이 빙자 투고고래 인데이 남이 카테 대여래 인데이 이네 파싱지 수용제 가면 나야 지도와 왜 직전에 가서는 약보다 제사를 나도를 참보다 제사를 세제 니람 당와이나 디레바데 용야 민두 야나 예용 메마 투미 소제네 팀스에 사샤스다 로브다 나래 게이 돈을 라보르다스 부고 돌아 야게 돈을 라보르다스라니 저 사샤스 디 윤대요 칼라 숨주 주제 납중하고 로를 개랑 랑웨기 뱀이 쳐가 숨돈을 랑체 부고 연지 랑체 뭐고 제체 수술 라발라 간요 말다 락체지다 요 말이니 개미기 맨날 여고 요네야 매주분다 가리 여고 있는 동전체 탑주 제체 랑솔려 땅체 왜 롱고 쇼베 이네야 벼드디 벼딩한 줄레스 맞을 게 벼이레스 맞을 쳐지 낭저레스 제 벼드 여바디 남이야 맞이베 제체 코란 속에 탐제레 이제레 니가 주그 제베 토네 무튼이 저에 백해점을레스 제제 쉐디 도잖아 내가 찡찡 인질 세죠 네 그때 열어와 맨날 여dom도 주고 Today is March 10th, National Uprising Day. We call it Sumju Tuden. Normally, Tibetan word is 10th March Remembrance Day. We have to remember. I'll be very brief. What we have to remember is the day in Tibet in 1959, when there was a nationwide uprising. They said Tibet belongs to Tibetans. China should get out of Tibet and go back to their country. And at that time, many elder Tibetans sacrificed their lives and they came to exile. They all told us, Chinese ultimate goal is to make Tibet a Chinese region. Make Tibetan Chinese. Make Tibetan religion Chinese. They want to destroy us. And that was the slogan, that was the belief, that was our national cause. Over time in exile, we rebuilt our monasteries and nunneries, school. We have revived our Tibetan language and Hakar performance everywhere. It's a demonstration of asserting our Tibetan identity, which are all plus points. Now in between, there are a few Tibetans who kind of say, maybe Chinese are not that bad. They might treat us a little better. They are giving us visas. We can go to Tibet. We can see for ourselves the development and the progress that China has made. Perhaps there might be a space for us. In brief, just this month, at the National People's Congress in Beijing, they passed a law. They passed a law saying in every school in China, particularly in quote-unquote minority areas, in Tibet, in Mongolia, in Uyghur region, and in other areas, the medium of instruction will be Chinese, from kindergarten all the way to high school. Everything has to be taught in Chinese, which means they are not just discriminating against Tibetans now, they are wiping out Tibetan as a language. Because their goal is to make Tibet a Chinese region, Tibetan a Chinese. Also, the Sinicization of Buddhism. What does it mean? It's not just the Communist Party of China will be superior to Tibetan Buddhism. It's not just that. Now you must make Buddhism as Chinese. For example, I was at a conference recently. For example, the Catholic or the Protestant, in the churches, they have cross on top of the churches. Now you have to demolish all the crosses, all the cross from these churches. And Muslims, they have minar. And Tibetans, we have korlo, the will, and two deer. Soon they will also demolish this thing so that they want to make Buddhism a part of China, a Chinese culture or Chinese tradition, not Tibetan Buddhism. So what happened in 1959 in Tibet, in the streets of Lhasa, that when our forefathers and mothers raised the slogan, Tibet belongs to Tibetan, we don't want to be part of China, because Chinese goal is to make Tibet a Chinese, Tibetan a Chinese, it's true. Now they're making laws, they're making policies. So we should remember March 10th of 1959, and we should continue with the belief and the slogans and the principles and the values and the courage and the sacrifices. All those brave men and women of Tibet. So that is our solemn duty, to stand here and remember their sacrifices, remember their aspirations, and pledge ourselves to fulfill that aspiration for Tibet, so that Tibet belongs to Tibetans. Thank you.
And now we have Ms. Sonam Hamula reading a statement from Congressman Laurie Trahan.
On this solemn day, I am honored to stand in solidarity with the Tibetan Association of Boston and the Tibetan Americans across the Commonwealth as we mark the 67th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising of March 10, 1959. This is a day of remembrance, reflection, and renewed commitment to the values of freedom, human dignity, and justice that unites us all. 67 years ago, Tibetans of every walk of life rose with extraordinary courage to defend their culture, their faith, and their way of life in the face of oppression. That uprising was a profound act of conscience of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Tibetan. It also gave birth to the legacy of resilience that continues to inspire the world today. The decades since 1959 have brought unrelenting hardships for Tibetan people: cultural destruction, religious persecution, arbitrary detention, and systematic suppression that many internationals observe as human rights advocates have rightly described as the grave threat to Tibetan civilizations itself. These are not abstract concerns. They are lived realities of real people, our friends, our neighbors, and our fellow human beings. What has never wavered in this remarkable commitment of the Tibetan people to nonviolence, compassion, and dialogue. In the face of immense injustice, the Tibetan community has chosen the path of peace. That modal strength is a gift that not only their own people, but to all of us who believe in the possibility of more and just a humane world. Here in Massachusetts, Tibetan Americans enrich our communities every day. They carry with them a culture of profound wisdom, artistic beauty, and deep spiritual tradition. They also carry the weight of the homeland under surge, and they hope that the world will not look away. I am proud to represent them in the United States Congress, and I am committed to ensuring their voices are heard. The United States has a long stood beacon for those who seek freedom and justice. That role comes with the responsibility to speak truthfully about human rights, including in Tibet. I remain committed to advocating for the protection of Tibetan culture and religious identity, for the perseverance of Tibetan Plateau and fragile environment, and for the meaningful dialogue that reflects the genuine aspiration of the Tibetan people. To the Tibetan Association of Boston, to all who gathered today in the Boston Common, the Massachusetts State House, and the Boston City Hall Plaza, your perseverance is an inspiration. Your presence here is raising the Tibetan flag, speaking your truth, honoring your history, is an act of courage and love. I stand with you today and always in the belief that freedom is not just an American value, but a universal one, with deep respect and solidarity for each man.
Awesome job. Thank you, Sunamla. Now we have Pema Yutsu Ninjila will be reading Congressman Stephen Lynch's statement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm honored to be reading this statement on the behalf of Congressman Stephen F. Lynch. Today, we come together to commemorate the 1959 Tibetan Uprising and to once again stand in solidarity with the people of Tibet as they fight for their fundamental human rights. This year's observance comes at an especially fraught time of unprecedented levels of war, instability, and relentless pressure on the rule of law and respect for basic human rights. Unfortunately, the authoritarian regime in China continues to be a bad actor, further tightening its chokehold on its people, including the people of Tibet. China's inhumane repression of the Tibetan people as it tries to erase their language, religious identity, and culture continues to be relentless. In its most recent report on human rights practices, the U.S. State Department found no improvements in the conditions faced by Tibetans at the hand of the PRC. China continues to arbitrarily arrest and abduct Tibetans, torture detainees, and severely restrict freedom of expression and the press. A practically brutal example is that of Anya Sangdra, a Tibetan activist who was released just last month from a Chinese prison after over 7 years in captivity. His only crime was being an activist and fighting for the rights of his people. While in prison, Anya was brutally tortured and then denied medical treatment, suffering vision loss, kidney disease, and severe blood pressure problems. Despite his release, Anya and his family are still being regularly surveyed. Anya's story, however, is not unique. He is only one of countless Tibetans who have been tortured and had their rights trampled on at the hands of the Chinese government. China's relentless policy of repression and synthesization and continued refusal to engage in meaningful negotiations with the Dalai Lama is not reflective of a great power. It only reflects fear and cowardice. With all of the crisis the world is facing, China is expecting, indeed it is counting on, the rest of the United States to be distracted and look away. But we cannot and will not. We reiterate our demand for the Chinese government to immediately end its repression of the people of Tibet and negotiate in good faith with the Dalai Lama to support a peaceful resolution. The people of Boston, the people of Massachusetts, and the American people will continue to stand with the people of Tibet in their struggle. Thank you.
Oh, Pema Yutsu Ninjila, thank you so much. Great job. And now we have Tinzi Yiga. She'll be reading Congressman Seth Moulton's statement and a brief speech as well. Yigala.
First, I'll start with Congressman Seth Moulton's speech. Today, we commemorate the courage of the Tibetan people on March 10, 1959, and celebrate the timeless morality of resistance of the Tibetan people have offered since. The virtues of nonviolence and compassion are in short supply throughout the world.
and it is a credit to the Tibetan resistance that it embodies those virtues against an oppressive and intolerant regime. I offer my strong support to the people of Tibet and to the Tibetan American community across Massachusetts, who represent two shared histories of the defense of freedom, faith, and universal rights. I pay tribute to His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and to all those who have remained steadfast in their commitment to fundamental human rights and a free Tibet. Dajtila, everyone. Today, I burn myself for the reunion of Tibetans. My only hope is the unity among Tibetans and the preservation of the Tibetan language and tradition. If we do that, all Tibetans will be reunited. These were Tsering Gyal's last words, a young monk from Golok who self-immolated and succumbed to his injuries in November of 2013. And he was not alone. In fact, hundreds of Tibetans have self-immolated to protest China's rule. And on this 67th anniversary of Tibetan National Uprising Day, I want us to take a moment and sit with those words. Not just hear them, but feel the weight of what it means. That ordinary people, farmers, nomads, students, monks and nuns felt that the only language the world might hear was the ultimate sacrifice, their life. The Tibetans who self-immolated were not politicians, held no offices, commanded no armies. They were common people. There were nomads who tended to yaks on high plateau, students who studied scriptures by candlelight, and nuns who rose before dawn to pray. And yet each of them made an extraordinary decision which they believed that we out here in the free world were worth dying for, that our movement was worth sustaining, that Tibet's story was worth telling. We owe them more than our grief, we owe them our action. Inside Tibet, the crackdowns have continued to be relentless. After protests erupted in 2008, large number of paramilitary forces were deployed in Lhasa and neighboring areas to crush peaceful demonstrations. All roads leading in and out of Lhasa were cordoned off. Soldiers patrolled the streets, curfews were installed, and in the darkness of those curfews, military forces entered people's homes and arrested them with no warning, without charge, without due process. People disappeared or were deemed missing. They silenced the voices of Tibetans inside Tibet, and they continue to do so today. This makes it all the more clear why our voices in exile matter so deeply, why we must use the liberties afforded to us in this free world to speak up. My name is Tenzin Yiga. I'm an undergraduate student at Harvard University, a human rights advocate, a child of political asylees, and most importantly, a Tibetan American. I was born in Dharamsala and spent my most formative years here in the US. And wherever I have gone, my Tibetan identity has come with me. The significance of our identity is one that was instilled in me from a young age. At home, my parents spoke only in Tibetan, taught me about our culture, and debated Buddhist philosophy with me in our dining room. They shared stories of their parents and grandparents in Tibet. And so I longed for a homeland that I had never seen. They dressed me in my chuba and brought me to March 10th protests when I was old enough to walk. Although I didn't fully grasp the significance of the protests at the time, I understood one thing. We were marching because others could not. And now, on the 67th anniversary, as our elders grow older, giving everything to keep this movement alive, I want to speak directly to the younger generation, to the young Tibetans in America and all over the world, across the diaspora. The torch is being passed to us, not gently, but urgently. Our very identity is under assault in ways that are both brutal and insidious. Nearly 1 million Tibetan children have been placed in Chinese-run colonial boarding schools, separated from their families, forbidden from speaking Tibetan, taught to forget who they are. Monks and nuns are barred from openly practicing their Buddhist faith. Tibetan women face attacks on their bodies, facing forced sterilizations. Tibetan nomads are being displaced from their ancestral lands while the Chinese government carries out large-scale hydrodamming and drilling into our sacred plateau. And our language, which is the very vessel of our identity, the living archive of our history, religion, and spirituality, is being systematically suppressed. Tsering Gyal's dying wish was the preservation of Tibetan language and tradition. His burned body and his last thought was, please keep our language alive. Preserving our culture is not just a personal or private matter, it is an active, intentional political resistance. Every time we speak Tibetan, you're defying a government that wants language erased. Every time you teach a younger Tibetan to read our script, to understand our history, and to take pride in who we are carrying on what Tiering Gyal and so many martyrs died hoping we could do. Culture is not only what we preserve in museums and monasteries, it is what we carry in our homes and in our memories, in ways that we greet each other, in the prayers we murmur before sleeping, in the stories we tell our children about a country we have never stopped calling home. Politically, our movement has made real strides. The bills that have been passed in support of Tibetans are not small feats. They represent years of tireless lobbying, of Tibetans walking through the halls of power and demanding to be heard. Ongoing legislation continues that work, reaffirming Tibet's unresolved legal status under international law and pressing for genuine dialogue between the Chinese government and Tibetan leadership. These bills don't pass on their own. These bills pass because Tibetans show up, because we advocate. And I'm urging every young Tibetan listening, don't wait. Don't assume that someone older, someone more experienced, or someone more qualified will do it. You are the person they've been waiting for. Your voice, your family's history, your identity is the most powerful testimony that any senator or representative will hear. This year marks almost 7 decades of occupation, but also marks almost 7 decades of resistance. Our elders carried this movement through decades of unimaginable hardship and through displacement, genocide, exile, and grief, through watching their homeland change under forces they could not stop. But what they never gave up is hope, and they never let go. And now the question falls to us, will we hold on? When I look at young Tibetans organizing locally within their community, lobbying in Washington, D.C., writing, speaking, researching, and creating art that keeps our culture alive, I see a generation that understands what is at stake. A generation that carries on the legacies of Tiering Gyal and all of the sacrifices that may never be forgotten. Our identity as Tibetans born after 1959 is inherently political. What we do as Tibetans ripples outwards, into our communities, into the halls of government, and to the international conscience. We are the amplifiers for every voice that has been suppressed inside Tibet. We are the continuation of every Tibetan who has sacrificed themselves in hopes that we would carry this movement forward. So let us continue that work. Let us educate, let us preserve, let us resist, proudly, strategically, and unapologetically, because those who cannot hope and trust that we will. We will see our homeland soon, and Tibet will taste freedom again. Tiering Gyal said, "My only hope is the unity among Tibetans and the preservation of Tibetan language and tradition. Let that be ours too, together in a free Tibet." Tiering Gyalo! Tiering Gyalo! Tiering Gyalo!
Yigala, thank you so much. Great job. And now we have Mr. Howard Fass, who is one of the most important person here right now. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have any of these support letters. We got like 9 of them from congressmen, mayors, governors. He did all the work. He mailed them, emailed them, called them constantly. And then he helped us get the permit, a lot of things. It wouldn't be possible without this guy's effort. Thank you so much, Howard.
Thank you. So I'll read the statement from Senator Ed Markey, a great supporter of ours. And one thing I wanted to say to all of you, even despite all the difficulties that are going on in the government, all the different world issues, when I've called our members of Congress and the Senate and different representatives, they were always receptive. And so it just shows that continuous contact and pushing for this issue bears fruit, and we can never give up. So here's a statement from Senator Ed Markey. Dear members of the Massachusetts Tibetan community, thank you for being here today to commemorate the 67th anniversary of the 1959 Tibetan Uprising. Today we honor the more than 1.2 million Tibetans who lost their lives as a result of the Chinese government's actions, and the countless others who continue to suffer under undue religious, cultural, and linguistic repression. This day is also an opportunity to reflect on and celebrate the strength of the Tibetan diasporas who, in the face of unimaginable adversity, have continued to advocate for justice and freedom on behalf of all Tibetans still residing in their homeland. I am proud to support the Tibetan people and their rights to preserve their culture, speak their language, and exercise their religious freedom. The United States has consistently held that the path to lasting peace in the Tibetan region is a continuous, substantive dialogue without preconditions. This policy was enshrined in the 2002 Tibetan Policy Act and reaffirmed in the Tibetan Support and Policy Act of 2020, a measure I was proud to co-sponsor. In 2024, I supported S-138, promoting a resolution to the Tibet-China Dispute Act, legislation that committed the United States to supporting efforts to protect the human rights of Tibetans and preserve their linguistic, cultural, and religious heritage. It is as important as ever for the United States to firmly maintain its support for Tibet and its people. Tibetan people continue to face human rights abuses perpetrated by the Chinese government. Chinese authorities continue to expel young monks from Tibetan monasteries, separate Tibetan children from their parents, and severely limit Tibetan cultural activity in an attempt to systematically erase Tibetan identity. Additionally, Tibetans are increasingly subject to government-mandated labor programs that tear them from their homeland and traditional ways of life. These actions are morally reprehensible and flagrant violations of international human rights standards. As long as China threatens the freedoms, culture, and human rights of the Tibetan people, I will continue to speak out and stand alongside the Tibetan community. I remain hopeful for the future of Tibet and U.S.-Tibet relations. The U.S. State Department recently named a special coordinator for Tibetan issues, a crucial resumption of diplomatic engagement in the region. As well, the U.S. government has presumed funding for the exiled Tibetan government, and Radio Free Asia is once again broadcasting in China in the Tibetan language. I had the utmost honor of meeting His Holiness the Dalai Lama during a visit to India in 2008. His unwavering courage in protecting the rights of the Tibetan people serves as a deep inspiration to everyone who fights for and believes in the dignity and freedom of all people. I give him my full support and reiterate that the Chinese government should have no role or influence in choosing his successor. To the Tibetan community in Massachusetts, I thank you for your commitment to defending the rights of the Tibetan people. Your service and determination are beacons of hope to people fighting for justice everywhere. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Awesome, Howard. Thank you so much. And now I have only one left that I think I will read. It's pretty short. That's from Congressman Jake Otenklis. Freedom, justice, and peace are hard-won rights. The Tibetan people's pursuit of them continues 67 years on. My commitment to them is unflinching, and my solidarity with the Tibetan American community is rock solid. I'm continuing to join efforts in Congress to punch through internet firewalls in regions like Tibet so the truth cannot be repressed. Thank you.
You still have two more.
Do you want to read it? I think Howard will do a better job than me reading it.
I'll read one, you read one. What do you say? Okay. So this is from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it's a proclamation. Whereas on March 10th, Tibetans around the world and in our Commonwealth gather to celebrate their cultural identity, and whereas Tibet, located in the world's highest region of Central Asia, is often called the roof of the world, and whereas Tibet's cultural and artistic legacy is renowned throughout the world, and whereas our vibrant Tibetan American community has made tremendous contributions to the Commonwealth society and culture. And now, therefore, I, Maura T. Healy, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim March 10, 2026 to be Tibet Day. Pretty cool. And then finally, we got a proclamation from the city of Malden. Whereas the 1950 Tibetan uprising marked a pivotal moment in modern history, where Tibetans from all walks of life courageously resisted the destruction of their culture, religion, and sovereignty. And whereas the aftermath of the uprising resulted in the loss of countless lives, and despite years of repression marked by immense hardships, the Tibetan people have remained steadfast in their commitment to nonviolence, compassion, and dialogue. And whereas Tibetan Americans continue to advocate peacefully for freedom, religious liberty, environmental protection of the Tibetan Plateau, and human rights, not only for Tibetans, but for all humanity. And whereas the Tibetan community in Malden has embodied these values by promoting human rights, religious harmony, and cultural enrichment throughout our city, and through programs, community service, and mutual support, the Tibetan Association of Boston has created meaningful opportunities for Tibetan residents and their neighbors to celebrate heritage and community. And whereas the preservation and celebration of Tibetan culture in Malden, including Tibetan history, language, cuisine, arts, and other traditions, has deepened the city's cultural vibrancy and unity, and the Tibetan community continues to demonstrate resilience and dedication to cultural preservation and peaceful expression of identity. And whereas the city of Malden values the right of all communities to remain their cultural and spiritual traditions and acknowledges the contributions of individuals who promote peace, compassion, and mutual respect across diverse backgrounds. And whereas these values align with Malden's ongoing efforts to foster an inclusive, welcoming city for all residents, now therefore I, Gary Christensen, Mayor of Malden, do hereby commemorate the 67th anniversary of the Tibetan National Uprising of March 10, 1959, and encourage all residents to embrace shared values of compassion, cultural understanding, and respect for religious cultural freedom. Thank you.
Tujiche Howard, thank you so much. And then the pages how do you know? You may make us a majing yelling additional or something. Around the kill Kundi, the key science do. Isawa Ganga Kasan Punila is severe. The page did you do not sure? Dinganzo Sumju to Hong Festival chat in a young Hagarki vigil that the deck of the page and I changu Gumuchik don't ask.